This is a recording for Mining Memories on Sunday the 3rd of November. My name's Robert Portman, and first of all, could you give me your name and where and when you were born?
My name is Barry Hibbert. I was born at Burcoats in South Yorkshire in 1932.
Okay, and which mining community did you grow up in?
In the Cresswell mining community.
Okay, and which friends or family were involved in the mining industry?
My father worked underground. His brother worked underground as well. Their father worked underground, although I never knew him. My maternal grandfather worked on the pit top, but his three sons worked underground as well, and there are others in the family that worked underground.
Okay, did they have different jobs and roles throughout their career in mining?
My father was what was known as a packer. He worked on the seams after the colliers had extracted the coal, making it safe to move forward. I don't know what my uncle did underground. I think his was a similar job. My grandfather, paternal grandfather, he lived near Eckington, a place called Troy, and moved to Glappall. And at Glappall, one of the Glappall pits, he was a deputy there, but they came to Cresswell, and he wasn't a deputy when he came to Cresswell. Exactly what his job was, I don't know, but it was underground.
Okay, so your father and your grandfather, did they talk about whether they enjoyed aspects of their job or any good or bad experiences they had working in mining?
I didn't know my grandfather. He died before I was born. My father, I don't think he enjoyed his work at the pit because he always said to me, "You're not going down the pit when you leave school."
And do you know what his normal working day would have been like?
He seemed to be work nights and afternoons, or afters, as they called it. Nights was pretty horrendous at home because you only had the radio in the house for entertainment, and if you turned it up too loud, there was a loud thumping coming from upstairs to turn it down, or if you didn't respond, it would come down and you got out of the way quickly.
And did he talk about anyone he knew at work or anything like that?
He used to talk about workmates, but not a lot. Not a lot at all, no.
Do you know whether they did anything socially together?
No, because this will come later in the interview, but he, when I was very young, he worked at Cresswell Pit, and then he moved to Whitwell Pit to work, and therefore his socialising, which amounted to going to the pub for a drink, there weren't many Whitwell miners that lived in Cresswell at all. So he wasn't seeing the men that he worked with when he went for a drink.
So he stayed socialising with the people that he'd met in Cresswell?
Yes, and knew in Cresswell.
Was he a member of any other organisations at all? So we talk about both trade unions and also social clubs as well.
No. No, he wasn't. Well, there had to be in a union, but the social clubs, I think he may have been made a member for convenience, but he didn't drink in the clubs. He went to the it would be the Portland Hotel or the Rose and Crown, where he would go for drinks.
And he said he got to be a member of a union when he was working in mining. Do you know whether they offered anything to their members at all?
Not that I know of. He just before I was born, it was a result of the miners' strikes, the 26 strike, and I think there were several smaller strikes that the Bolsover Colliery Company, probably several colliery companies started this. There was a union formed called the Spencers Union. Now, my dad always used to refer to it as a boss's union. And just before I was born, all the men at Cresswell, and I take it that it was all the Bolsover pits as well, were given an ultimatum. You join the Spencers Union or you go, you get the sack. And so my dad got a job at Harworth pit, and this is the reason why I was born at Burcoats, which is the mining village, or was then, for the Harworth pit. But I think it was, from what I could gather, it was pretty rough there, because miners from all over the country were coming to Harworth pit, and I think there was a lot of street fighting during the days and nights, and it got a bit too rough for them. Probably more so my mother than Dad. Anyway, they moved back to Cresswell. I think I was only a few weeks old when they moved back to Cresswell, and he must have relented and joined the Spencers Union at Cresswell. There he stayed until he moved to Whitwell Pit. Now, when he moved to Whitwell Pit, I don't know. But it was in the Derbyshire Miners Association. They hadn't amalgamated as the National Miners Union at that time. And I can always remember him saying that after Cresswell, how antiquated Whitwell Pit was. They'd got all the oldest machinery and oldest methods for extracting coal there. But, he stuck it there until he retired, so it couldn't have been so bad for him.
Right, and we'll move on to your life. So what was a normal day look like to you when you were younger, growing up in a mining community?
Well, it was school days. We lived at the top of Cresswell, so you either had to walk to school, which was down at the bottom of the Creswell, or there was a bus service up to Elmton in those days, and you could catch the bus back home. I can't remember much about school at all. The infant school, I've got a vivid memory of in the afternoons being given we each had our own individual pillow, and we lay down for so long each afternoon. And then I went to what was called the council school then. The things that I can remember about the council school was going out during the war, collecting rose hips to help the war effort. What they did with them, I don't know. Collecting nettles, and they used to be spread out on a veranda by the hall of the school and left to dry and then collected. Again, what they were used for, I don't know. But of course, as children, we enjoyed picking rose hips. Whether we enjoyed picking nettles, I don't know, but we got out to the classroom, and that was the main thing. I can remember as well at the school, we used to practice putting the gas masks on that we're all issued with. Every Monday, you took pennies in to buy saving stamps. And also I can remember, it must have been older boys doing this, but there's a stirrup pump in the school, and we went out into the garden there with this stirrup pump and practiced using it. Now, whether if an incendiary bomb had dropped near the school, they sent two of us lads out with the stirrup pump to douse it. I don't know. But I think outside school we were very active. We used to roam the countryside quite a lot. We used to go up to Elmton, round by Frithwood a lot, and of course come down the crags where we used to get a piece of candle and a box of matches and go in the caves and wander around the caves, or climb up the rocks if you could keep out of the sight of the gamekeeper who lived in the lodge at the top there. Sunday school was quite a feature of our lives. We were encouraged to go to Sunday school, well, morning and afternoon. It was the main service in the morning, and then the afternoon one was for children. But the anniversaries that the Sunday schools or the chapels, excuse me, the anniversaries that the chapels had were quite interesting, because at the front of the chapel, staging was built, tiered staging up at the front, and all the children, some sang solos, read poems, and sang songs during the service. But this took place in the evening, I think. But in the morning, the chapel with all the children and the adults involved with the chapel used to walk the streets. Cresswell's was divided into two halves. You did one half one week and the week after the other half, and you sang hymns in the street, and people used to go from door to door with collecting boxes, collecting funds for the chapels. But that's something that's completely gone now.
Was it something you enjoyed doing?
Yes, it was interesting, and the the adults involved with the chapel, most of them were very nice people, down-to-earth people, very friendly, and could relate to the children. Yes.
So we've talked about what you do, and what you've done at school and also in your spare time, and what your father did in the mining industry. When you did have time off for holidays, did you go anywhere or do anything together as a family?
Yes. I can't remember going anywhere like to the coast during the war, but when Dad had a week off work, we used to get on bikes and go down to Carberton Lakes, and we'd do that each day, and we'd get to know people from other mining areas that were doing the same thing, and gather together in a group, and we enjoyed it there, especially when the weather was fine. We'd take lots of food with us, and well, I couldn't swim at the time, but somebody I can remember had made a raft, and we used to spend a lot of time on this raft in the lake. And at the time, there were a lot of troops based at Norton, Canadian troops, and they used to come to the lakes as well. And sometimes you get talking to these young Canadian men as well. And on the way home, we used to call at Cockney at the Major Oak pub and hope that they got some beer, and for Dad that is, and stop and have a drink. But very often there'd no beer, and Dad's face was a picture when he had to have a glass of lemonade instead of beer. Later on, I can remember going to Blackpool once. That must have been when the war had finished. And then we used to go to Scarborough as well for holidays.
Can you remember doing anything while you were in Scarborough? Any activities? Or?
I can remember playing cricket on the beach, and then walking around Scarborough. The weather always seemed to be very wet when we were there, and I can seem to remember walking around Scarborough in wet clothing. But I can remember going on, they had two ships there that took me out on excursions. I think one was called the Corona, and I can remember going on that, but Mum was violently ill on it, as were lots of people, because you could see the crew busy swilling the decks down when they got back into harbour, and everyone had got off the boat.
And how do you think living in a mining community affected your day-to-day life?
I don't know that it did affect it at all because you didn't go out into other places, so you'd nothing to compare your life with. You just made the best of your life in Cresswell and got on with it. When I after the junior school in Cresswell, when I went to the secondary school, then I came into contact with children from other areas of northeast Derbyshire, but again, they're all from similar communities, namely mining communities, and the experiences were very much the same. Although one of the things that I can remember about the secondary school, it was at Staveley that I went, the grammar school there. There was, well, it's still there, an old school that dates from, I think it's the 1500s, is it? And we used to have music lessons in there. And at the back of the school were old bookcases, and they'd got copies of illustrated London news magazines, mainly from the Boer War. And I used to get to the back if I could, so that I could get one of these magazines down off the shelf and go through these magazines. I mean, in Cresswell, I'd not heard anything about the Boer War at all, so this was something new. In fact, in the First World War, although my grandfather, my maternal grandfather, he was in the First World War, he didn't talk about it at all.
We'll move on to a significant event, the Cresswell Pit disaster, 1950. Have you ever any memories of it at all?
Yes. By this time, I'd left school and I was working in the gardens at Welbeck, where the garden centre is now. And besides growing plants and fruit and vegetables, wreaths and bouquets were made there, and a lot of orders came into Welbeck for wreaths. I can remember the day of the disaster. I rode to work, and the foreman said, "Have you heard what's happened at Cresswell?" I said, "No, what?" He said, "There's been a bad accident at the pit." He said, "Have you got any family members who might have been at the pit?" And I said, "No, I didn't think so." And then after that, it was preparing the bases of the wreaths. And then many of the staff were pulled in to do this work. And I think the Friday before the main funeral, we worked quite late at night, finishing off these wreath orders. The Saturday of the actual funeral, the main funeral, it was a miserable day, overcast, raining all day long. The weather fitted a very sombre occasion. On the street where we lived in Cresswell at the time, quite a lot of men were killed in the disaster.
And that obviously had quite an impact where you were living.
Yes, yes. Well, for days, if not weeks after, it was the main topic of conversation. You just couldn't get it away out of your mind.
Okay, did you move away from Cresswell when you were
Yes.
about 18?
Yes.
So you moved away from the mining community, and how did you feel when the mining industry effectively ended, even though you weren't living in that community anymore?
Well, I suppose we were realistic in a way because all mines have got a life, and all the mines in this area were coming to the end of the life. Probably, if it hadn't been for the strike, they would have existed a little bit longer, but not much longer at all. They'd worked the seams out. They were coming to the end of the seams, and that's how things go in mining.
So was that Whitwell and Cresswell, or all the ones in the local area?
Yes. Well, they're all, excuse me, all of them were given an area to work, and when they were reaching the boundary, they would stop. In the past, in some of the older mining areas, as my dad used to put it, they tried to pinch coal. They went a little bit further than they should have done, and sometimes they broke into a seam of a pit that had closed. The seam had flooded, and it flooded the new seam, and this caused quite a few problems. I think the main one at Clown closed due to that. But of course, when the mines were nationalised, they made sure that they kept to the areas that they were working in, or supposed to work.
All right, thanks, Barry. So this has been a recording for Mining Memories on Sunday the 3rd of November 2013.